Hello everyone. Today we are going to be taking a look back at some of the news that have been coming out in regards to AdMech, and a look at the state of the faction, as we should be in the dawn of a new data slate very soon. That said, we have since received a new model in 30k. These bad boys actually look sick. I don't know exactly how they play in the game, but I see them and think somewhere between a flying Cataphren melee elite. That's not something we currently have in our range, as our more heavy infantry is bound to Trax and our flying infantries are Taraxi. It's definitely a bit of salt in the wound to get a new unit in another game system, but I suppose there's really nothing we can change. I do wonder how good the sale numbers for those look as opposed to Scatros. That said, I wanted to do a roundup of stats as to where we are now and what maybe we can be expecting. I don't know exactly what the extent of this is going to be, since we had a rules change back in December, so it's possible that this data slate is only going to be points changes. But since December was also technically out of cycle with Grotmas happening, it's possible we might have rules changes. Either way, I'm not entirely optimistic that we will receive a rules change, which is one of the things that we really need to put us in line to where we should be from an army identity standpoint. That leads to the only changes that we can receive subsisting of points rather than rules, and that only perpetuates the problems that we have cheap points already. In my opinion, while the data slate changes were huge, they weren't enough, and that can be seen by the fact that while the data slate changes made the points of our army go up to compensate for that shot of power, the following data slate saw more points drops since units continued to underperform despite the buffs. It's a bit of a catch-22 still, and short of another rewrite, I don't expect us to dramatically change. Lock in for another 3 months of Skitarii spam, but at least we have Halo Screed to switch things up now. As for our little charts today, we are going to be getting information from two different sources. One is from StatCheck, a really nice website to check through numerous charts with different buttons and levers to see what you want, and from our fellow content creator Warp Friends, who compiles information weekly and by current data slate to give an up-to-date summary on what's going on with the meta. Please be sure to check out their channel and give them a follow. So looking at the state of the game chart here on StatCheck, Mechanicus is showing a win rate of 44% with a 13% 4-0 event start, 0 event wins. We can then further break down the chart to show us a detachment win rate, which is going to be 53% for Halo's Creed Battleclade, 43% for Skitarii Hunter Cohort, and that is all that it's really showing here, as well as Halo's Creed having a 4-0 event start finish of 25%. The detachment percentages for player population seem to be 50% for Halo's Creed Battleclade, 38% for Skitarii Hunter Cohort, and 13% for Cohort Cybernetica. It's not exactly surprising that those two are our top. Cybernetica is a pretty good detachment in my opinion. It's just a matter of really piloting it well and having to play 2 steps ahead of your opponent because all your stratagems are in the command phase. While the detachment rule isn't great, it is still a pretty good detachment because of its enhancements and its stratagems. So you basically just have to play without a detachment rule, especially if you're not bringing bots. As for what Warp Friends is giving us today, the tournament meta results week of March 3rd, so this is only looking at the past week based on things that happened around in the tournament scene, and we can see that we're near the bottom again with a 40% win rate, a 10% of XO X1, and 2.1 army representation, which is not the worst. Looking below us, you can see that Space Wolves is there with a higher win rate but a lower XO X1, which means that we have, as Warp Friends described, a lower floor but a higher ceiling, in the sense that people are finding more success winning tournaments by almost double, and that's due to the fact that AdMech players tend to be ridiculously skilled when it comes to the competitive side, even though our overall win rate isn't as good. Below us is Black Templars and Sisters of Battle. I know that they're kind of saying that those armies are suffering really badly. I'm gonna come out and say something maybe a little controversial. I think while Sisters is not good, they did get over nerfed. I will acknowledge that. I think they're kind of going through that thing that Chaos Space Marines went through earlier in the game, in the edition, where Profane Zeal got nerfed, and so did Nurgle Rhinos. and people were instantly abandoning the army, and that led to a drastically low play rate, and then they shot right up after a couple weeks. Now obviously Sisters hasn't shot up. What I'm getting at is that the reason that their win rate is so low is also corresponding to their army representation. I feel like a lot of people that are playing Sisters, or that did play Sisters, abandoned the army, and that's why you see that low percentage and low win rate. It's not to say that they would be much better if people were playing them, but they definitely wouldn't be bottom of the chart. And I think that our army is a good testament to that, because we've been at the bottom for a very long time, where Sisters was once the reigning kings and so were Black Templars. We've always been down here. Like, our seat is really warm. You know what I mean? So one, I don't have much pity, but two, it goes to show that we've had 40% win rates, and we've had time where we've had up to 56, and that's just because the meta is shifting. That's not to say that our army is good, because it has such a volatile rate, but it is to say that I think that either Sisters is in a bad meta, that Sisters is just being underplayed because of the nerf, which is something that we have seen time and time again, especially in this edition, as I just said. But I do think that they need buffs, right? It's just that I think that them crying out for it is a little pathetic. As somebody who's been in the rut for a while now, right? And that's not to say that I want Sisters to have like a bad time, like, oh, we have a shit time, so you do too. I'm just saying that you had, what, 2 data slates? 1 data slate where you were the best army in the game, and now you have your moment where you're kind of knocked to the ground. Like, I don't know. I don't exactly feel bad. And if anyone is going to get attention, it's probably going to be Sisters. At the very least, their nerfs were very army based, which is the thing that made it so poor, because a lot of detachments focus around like things like miracle dice and stuff. So knocking that down directly buffs the army as a whole, not just the detachments. But that's also a pretty easy thing to try to fix back and tweak into a more healthy level, as opposed to, say, our army, who just has a bunch of things wrong with it. Sisters just has that one overcorrection, right? So they just need to tweak it to a level that is fine and healthy. Whereas for us, you have to do a mass sweep, and that's what we saw with the data slate last year, where we had like 15 things changed. I'm obviously exaggerating, but like it was a lot of things, like the Onager, the Rust Stalker, the rule for Belisarius Call's ability, just a bunch of things that came to change. So since we were talking about overall, we can look here that this is the current data slate, not all of the addition, and Sisters is down there because that's, you know, where they have been since those giant nerfs. If we were to look a little bit farther back, I'm sure Sisters would not be down here. So even with all the nerfs that Sisters took, like everyone is crying that, you know, Sisters is doing really bad. Same with Black Templars. But again, like, they're still not that far from us, which is kind of crazy. I mean, it's really telling, isn't it? Like, if Sisters and Black Templars didn't get overcorrected, we would be at the bottom, and it wouldn't be an unfamiliar sight, you know? Like, Sisters is only 0.1% in win rate, and what, 2 point something in XO/X1, but they are almost half of our army representation. Like, it wouldn't surprise me that if more people played Sisters and didn't abandon them, that Sisters would surpass us. Now, obviously, we're bickering about who has the shittier thing. It's just saying that ours has been down there longer, right? And that even so, with double the play rate, we are still going to the same statistical average of the worst state of Sisters, right? Our buff that we got over time is only comparable to the worst state that Sisters has been in, which is damning in my opinion, right? Which is why I say that even though I would like to see changes to the army, I'm not exactly optimistic. I think we are going to continue to stay here, because if this next one is going to be points and not rules, then there's nothing that's going to really change for us drastically. And if it is going to be rules versus points, then it has to be something substantial, like very, very substantial, because we kind of need the reverse of what Sisters had. The thing is that Sisters has a very good foundation. We do not. And then coincidentally, Warfriends always does 2 faction focuses per week. Surprisingly, and, you know, perfect timing, he covered AdMech this time around, which, again, this information is like a catch-all for your entire faction. So I really like this product. Really, you know, kudos to Warp Friends for putting this together for every army. So looking at ours at the very top is meta health rating current data slate, is basically saying if the average for a healthy army is 100%, we are currently at 77.7, which is not bad, but you know, the standard is 100, not the best, if that makes sense. The 100 isn't saying that this is the best, like out of 100, it's saying 100 is average, 100 is optimal, right? And we're below that. So that's not exactly a surprising piece of information there. Win rate meta average is looking at 47.5, so basically 50. We are at 43, far below that. We are technically, I think if I remember correctly, it's 45 to 55 is the averages that GW are aiming for win rate, healthy win rates. And we have always been teetering just below what's acceptable. If it is 40 to 60, then just above what's acceptable. Army representation 3.7 versus 2.2. That's not exactly surprising. We are a little bit of a niche faction. We've lost a lot of the things that made us really popular at the launch of 9th when a lot of people were playing us. So I'm not exactly, you know, that's not something really to hold contention over, especially because we are a very expensive army to get into. So even more reason why I will never expect that number to be on average. XOX1 is something we'll get into here in a little bit. So 14.5 is the average. We're at 11.6 is not bad. Kind of like Warp Friends would say in this video, that our averages are rather high for our play rate and our XOX1. Unfortunately, the XO and X1 does not translate well to tournament wins because we have 1-0 out of the 4.7 that is the average. Not exactly surprising. So looking at sub-faction player percentage for the current data slate, obviously we got Halo's Creed this data slate. I'm pretty sure it was going to be the most played because it's the newest hotness. A lot of people were excited for it. Skitarii Hunter Cohort is second with almost half of the play rate, like a little bit less. And then you have Rad Zone and Cohort Cybernetica barely hanging on. As you notice, Datasom and Explorer Maniple don't even have enough pool to make the list, which is, you know, rather depressing that our detachment is being played a lot by the Halo's Creed, and if you were to take that out, then Skitarii Hunter Cohort would still, you know, take that by a mile. As for the win rate, it's looking pretty healthy. And I say healthy, but it's overall like spread out evenly. But it's the reason that it's not healthy is because, say, Datasom has a 60% win rate, which is like really high, but that is being skewed because if you look at the sub-faction player one above it, you can see that Datasom barely shows up. That means like nobody's playing it, but the one person that did is winning a tournament with it. So shout out to him. But other than that, Cybernetica is at 30, Skitarii Hunter Cohort's at 45, Radzone at 44, and Halo's Creed at 44. So for almost half of our faction playing, more than half of our faction playing Halo's Creed and only resulting with a 44% win rate is not great. Skitarii Hunter Cohort with a 45. It used to be the bigger one. Maybe if it had bigger numbers, it'd be a little bit more skewed, but I wouldn't expect it to be above 45 personally. So the right side, the current data slate stats, just basically says out of the 27 armies, what is our rank? For players, 155 at rank 20. Total games played, 811 for rank 20. Win rate, 43%. Rank 25, so we're at the bottom 3 there. Army representation, 2.2. 20 again. XO, X1 results, 11.6. 21. Not looking good there either. And tournament wins 0, which puts us at 25, again bottom 3. So a lot of our stats are just really low. It's not exactly a surprise. If anything, this is a really good metric to show that we still continue to need buffs, and it would be interesting to see how these cards have changed like month to month, so that we can see an overall picture of like the edition as a whole, which I think would be really interesting, just to paint a picture, right? Because if we were to do like a side-by-side for every other army, I don't think you would get something that's consistently this low, right? And that's like the issue that I have with people calling for other buffs. It's not to say that we obviously want a meta that is perfectly balanced, as all things should be, in the sense of like 50% win rate should be the goal for every army, right? So I'm not saying that like Sisters of Black Templars, and I think it was World Eaters that was also down there, shouldn't get buffs. They should, but it seems like the attention is usually on other things that isn't us, right? And even though we did get this really fat buff, and you could say that that was the attention that we got, it's still not enough, right? It just reminds me of the fact how, like, when our codex first came out, there was no changes and people were saying, hey, let it cook, let it handle itself. But then, you know, the moment that people point out that Marines is suffering, next data slate they get a buff, right? It's like, where was their cooking and simmering? And if Sisters is going to get a change, it just speaks to that point more, to show that one data slate fucked them up, next data slate they get fixed. Whereas for us, it was like, we're fucked, they skip us, and then we get our fix. So that's like, what I want to say, 6 months, half a year of no changes, right? And that seems unfair to me, but other people are getting attention as well. It's really hard to not come off as being salty here, but it just seems very evident, you know? Like, there's a lot of things that you can point to. Like, you can point at how we've been doing over the edition as a whole. We've been there at the bottom. We've seen people up and down, right? Chaos used to be down there with us, now they're up. Eldari used to be down there with us, now they're up. Sisters used to be up there, now they're down here with us, and I'm sure they'll move here in a little bit, because if you guys don't know, there's been a couple of leaks for the new data slate. They're not substantiated, but it looks like Sisters are going to get changes too. GSC used to be down there, now they're one of the best armies with Final Day. It just, we have consistently been at the bottom, right? Pre-codex, post-codex, whether we were at the 50 point at one point, we were, when we got our first data slate buffs, but then we saw ourselves dip back down again. We spend more time in the dirt than we do up in the sky, is kind of what I'm trying to communicate here. So let's hope that we get something. Again, I don't think it's going to happen. I think this is kind of just the reality that we've been pinned to this edition, and I hope that they do a better job next edition. So that'll do it for this video, guys. Just very chill, laid back, unscripted, looking into the army and things that we got announced. It seems like 30k is receiving a lot more attention than we are. That kind of isn't a surprise at this point. It just kind of seems like they're fucking with us, because it is, of even the people that don't play AdMech are in the comment sections there in their like social medias being like, hey, what's the deal with this? You know what I mean? So you know, here we are, I guess. That about wraps it up, guys. Thank you for tuning in and checking out the video. Again, huge shout out to Warp Friends. Please be sure to check out his channel. He posts his videos weekly, and he's been a recent subscriber and commenter here, so make sure you say hi and thank you to him at the bottom if you find him. Bar that. Hey guys, Post Editing Omni here. I forgot to mention that I created a Discord server based on popular requests, so it's going to be in the description if you want to join. It'll be free to join, but I made it so that the Patreon tiers have their own, like, flair, I guess, and their own tiers. So I'll do my best to assign those. It's still in, like, beta, if you want to call it that, like, soft release. So I'm still figuring out a lot of things like bots and stuff. You might see that around. So just bear with me while I try to make it, like, a more seamless experience. But I wanted to get it out there. So if you're interested, please check the description for that. Thanks. That's all I have for you guys. Hopefully this next video you guys are going to enjoy. It's going to be a little bit bigger. I will see you then. Ciao, ciao. A huge thank you to my patrons for their continued support in the Engine Seer tier, and a special thank you for the fabricators being the foundation for this channel in Siglawson Jr., Dr. Jones, Makito, and Tech Priest Thorn. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it.